And I found it kind of interesting. I've got at least one Republican attorney that's volunteering for the Democratic Party, because this really is a nonpartisan issue. We want to be sure that everybody has the right to vote. So some of the things that we've seen as problems that have come up are, the first one that seems to be the biggest problem is the changes in polling locations. And because a lot of the polling locations, or at least some of them, were selected late, and several of the counties, including Lonoke County, significantly reduced the number of polling sites, we think there's going to be a lot of voter confusion, particularly on election day. I had a lady come to me this morning and said, well, I'm just going to go down to the fire department and vote. And I said, no, you're not, because they're not voting. She said, well, how am I supposed to know that? So, you know, we all get so much junk mail around election time. I'm afraid people are seeing notices and not paying attention to them, or in some cases, the notices have come out so late that people are not going to get in time. So we're very concerned about that and getting the word out that those locations have changed. The other big problem we're seeing is on education about the new voter identification laws. We're concerned that the Secretary of State has not done a really great job of educating the counties as to what problems can come up, what identification you need. We've had several people call who had an out-of-state driver's license but have moved and registered in Arkansas, and they know they're registered and they're on the rolls, but when they bring their out-of-state driver's license as their ID, it doesn't count, and they didn't understand that. We've had some other people that different clerks are interpreting the voter identification a little differently, so we just think there needs to be a better job done of educating people what's out there. The second issue that we've had, or as you've probably already heard, is we've had some people left off of the ballots. The most significant problem, I know Susan's going to talk about this, is that Susan Inman was left off the ballot in Garland County for at least the first part of the election. We also had an incident in Columbia County where a state representative's race was left off of the ballot. Although this isn't a perfect fix, in that case, the good news is the whole race was left off the ballot, so they're allowing those voters, if they're willing to come back in and vote, they're allowed to come back in and vote on that single issue. So at least there's not a perfect fix, but there's a fix for that. The problem with Susan's is there's no fix for that. Once those votes have been cast, those votes have been cast. The third thing is so don't know how familiar, I don't want to get down in the weeds, but we're doing kind of voter roll purges, and some of those are very appropriate. We want to be sure that people who are on the voting rolls are actually residents of the state and that they're eligible to vote. The problem is the way it works, they send out notices to the last known address. So you get the notice that says you haven't voted in the last so many elections, you need to contact us. And so sometimes people do, sometimes people don't. One of the things is it disadvantages poor people because they're more likely to move, less likely to have the same address that they did 8 years ago when they registered to vote. But also, if they get that notice, they get marked as inactive on the ballot. Well, that mark on the registration should not in any way prevent people from voting. If you're marked as inactive and you show up to vote, you vote, inactive comes off, and you're now back on the active rolls. So we've had a couple of counties that are interpreting that law differently and questioning inactive voters and requiring them to resubmit applications, and it's creating some confusion. I also don't think the notices were clear, and that some people who have